Good day, friends, and welcome to our special event this year on the Antahkarana. So before we start, let's have a very short visualization to link up with DK, a visualization that he himself has given us. So first of all, let us link up with all our group members, pouring yourself out in love to each of them and to all collectively, and associated with yourself with them as part of the whole. Remember, we are one soul. Then raise your consciousness as high as you possibly can and endeavor to hold steady, holding the mind unwaveringly at the right point of tension in the group light. And realize that on DK's side, he also stands steady, pouring out upon us his love and strength, and endeavoring to lift us up into a higher state of consciousness. So visualize ahead of us a disc or a sphere of indigo blue, a deep electric blue. Imagine DK standing at the center of that disc, waiting. Then see a band of golden light between us and the disc, gradually shortening, thus bringing us closer together, slowly and steadily, until we enter into the heart of the blue disc. And now let us sound a blue Om as we merge with DK's consciousness subjectively. We will be discussing quite a few points in our presentation today. So here are the summary of our contents for your perusal later on. But first of all, let us ask ourselves, what is the Antahkarana? Well, according to the age's wisdom, it is the bridge the man builds through meditation, understanding, and the magical creative work of the soul between the three aspects of his mind nature. That is, the higher mind, the soul, the son of mind, and our lower mind down here on the fourth subplane of the mental plane. And this bridge is the bridge of consciousness. This bridging has to be done in the consciousness aspect and concerns the continuity of man's awareness of life in all his various aspects. The gap between the lower mind and the soul has to be bridged, thus producing an at-one-ment between soul and personality. And this is the first stage. And the second stage of the Antahkarana is the gap between the lower mind and the higher mind must also be bridged. And this is via the soul. When the first stage is completed, that is, the personality is aligned and is aware of his soul nature, then the second stage takes place. When the united consciousness of soul personality or the soul-infused personality becomes aware of his group others and is group conscious, then he can consciously take part in the furthering of the plan of hierarchy. So the Antahkarana is really the line of light or the line of consciousness between the monastic permanent atom on the first subplane of the mental plane and the mental unit on the fourth subplane. This is technically speaking. And this is DK's diagram of the Antahkarana. The first stage is between the personality and the soul. Then the second stage is between the monad energizing the spiritual triad and the soul. Now the Antahkarana must be looked at as the line of consciousness. An initiation, which is a process of expansion or unfoldment of consciousness, then it makes sense that the Antahkarana is symbolically represented by the line from the first initiation to the sixth. And after the sixth initiation, then it's the identification of the initiate with the will of the Logos. So it no longer deals with a state of consciousness, but it is a state of being. Now let's discuss the nature of the rainbow bridge. It is not a series of energy threads, DK tells us, slowly woven by the soul-infused personality and met by corresponding threads projected by the spiritual triad. But it is a state of consciousness. So we're really harping on that point, friends, that the Antahkarana is really a state of consciousness. The Antahkarana, therefore, is the thread of consciousness, of intelligence, and the responsive agent in all sentient reactions. The interesting point to bear, DK tells us, and where we must now lay the emphasis, is that this thread of consciousness is evolved by the soul. and not by the monad. Well, you might ask, well, why by the soul? Because the soul is the body of consciousness. DK equates soul and consciousness. Spirit meets and contacts matter, and the result of that contact is the birth of the son, or the ego, the consciousness aspect, because the soul is the body of consciousness. So the science of the Antahkarana is the mode of bridging the gap which exists in men's consciousness between the threefold world of physical, emotional, mental functioning and the higher levels of spiritual development, which is the world of ideas, of intuitive perception, of spiritual insight and understanding. We are told that there exists a gap in consciousness, though not in fact. The sutratmic strand of energy bridges the gap and tenuously relates monad, soul, and personality. So the life thread, the life aspect, links the monad, the soul, and the personality into one living whole, but not in consciousness. Because this is what we are building in this second solar system. It's the soul, it's the consciousness which is being unfolded throughout the whole of the second solar system. Well, I was a bit ahead of myself here. So the goal of the second solar system is to develop the middle principle, the soul or consciousness. And we are told in white magic that the object for which life takes form and the purpose of manifested being is the unfoldment of consciousness or the revelation of the soul. But friends, this goes beyond our solar system. The revelation of the soul is the object of preoccupation of our local cosmic logos. Who knows, it could be even beyond our cosmic logos, but we don't know, or at least I don't know. I haven't come across this in the Ageless Wisdom. So the revelation of the soul, the unfoldment of consciousness, is the object of preoccupation of the one whom naught may be said. And that includes our solar system, since our solar system is the heart center of this great cosmic logos.
Nicole, can you
Yes?
raise your volume, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
What are the three aspects of the mind? Here it is. The first aspect is the higher mind, which is the lowest aspect of the spiritual triad, located there on the first subplane of the mental plane. Then we have the son of mind, the soul, which spans over the three subplanes, first, second, and third subplanes of the mental plane. Then the third aspect of mind is the lower mind on the fourth subplane of the mental plane. So let's take one aspect at a time. What is the higher mind? How can we define it? Well, the higher abstract mind is the power to comprehend that which is not concrete or tangible, or that aspect of the mind which is related to the world of ideas. It's the pattern building faculty, or the mind which works with the blueprints upon which the forms are modeled. The abstract mind is the lowest aspect of the spiritual triad, which is the personality, so to speak, of the monad. The higher abstract mind is the custodian of ideas, and that which is the conveyor of illumination to the lower mind, once that lower mind is en rapport with the soul. So it is the illuminating mind, this higher mind. And what is the soul, or the son of mind? It is the Lord of love and wisdom. The soul is the Son of God, the product of the union of spirit and matter. It is the embodiment of conscious mind, the expression of divine, intelligent awareness. So the soul is the perceiving entity produced through the union of Father, Spirit, and Mother, Matter. So we can use this little equation: spirit plus matter equals soul or consciousness. And the soul then is the vehicle of consciousness.
Sorry, Nicole.
Yeah?
Some still have problem hearing you.
Well, I am full. I might put my... what about
Oh,
now?
yeah, that's better. Yes.
Okay.
That's better. That's better. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll put the microphone really, really close to my mouth.
Good.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
guys. From its very nature, the soul is consciousness or aware in three directions. Let us start with the last one first, and then we'll go up, because it makes more sense to us. It is self-conscious. It is brought to fruition in the phenomenal appearance of a human being. Then it is group consciousness. Its awareness then is the awareness of love, of quality, of spirit in its relationships. And thirdly, it is God conscious, only potentially, unfolded after its self-conscious aspect is perfected and its group awareness is recognized. So it's really consciousness in three directions: towards the God realm, group consciousness, towards all souls, the ashrams, and all those who are incarnated, and it is self-conscious. So just like the rainbow is the creation of light when the sun's rays pass through droplets of rain, so too the soul is the creation of light when spirit fuses with the form. And the Antahkarana is the line of light which links the two, that is spirit and its form. So third, what is the lower mind? It is the receptive mind. It is the reasoning principle. It is the form-building faculty, as thoughts are things. It is a substance, very subtle, but is substance nonetheless, because it is located in the dense body of the Logos. It is that which is essentially the power to comprehend that which is concrete or tangible. So what makes up the lower mind? If we look at our familiar diagram, we see that the mental unit is made up of the base chakra, the solar plexus, the sacral, and the splenic center on the fourth subplane of the mental plane. So here we have the lower four centers and their synthesis, the ajna. So first of all, the base chakra. What type of force is it? It's the seat of our unconscious fears. It's our instinct for survival, for success, or for achievement. Then the sacral, which is the organ of physical creation. So it's sex, and on a more subtle level, astral level, it is about personal relationship. It's me and the other. It's about money, because it is physical creation. It is the gratification of material desire. That is comfort, sex, thirst, a hunger, anything that has to do with the gratification of the material urges or physical urges. Then we have the solar plexus itself, which is the organ of desire, which is the seat of the astral body. And the synthesis of all of those is the ajna, which is the synthesis of personality, desire. So let's have a brief summary of the three aspects of the mind. The lowest aspect, we see the lower concrete mind. The middle aspect is the individualized mind. And the highest aspect is the higher abstract mind. Then we have the receptive common sense, the middle aspect, the soul, and the highest aspect, the transmitter of buddhi, the higher abstract mind. The lowest aspect is the highest aspect of the form nature. But the middle aspect is the soul, buddhi, manas. And the highest aspect is a reflection of the divine nature. The lower mind is a reflection of Atma, the spiritual will. The soul is a reflection in mental substance of the monad, that is, the spiritual love wisdom. And the highest aspect is intuitive love, understanding, inclusiveness, buddhi. We have the throat chakra for the lowest aspect, the middle aspect, the heart center, and the highest aspect, the head center. These are the three chakras that the soul can descend to, but no lower. Throat, heart, and head. And the lowest aspect has to do with knowledge, the middle aspect, love, and the highest aspect of the mind, sacrifice. Why build the rainbow bridge? Well, first of all, is to bridge the gap which exists in men's consciousness between the world of ordinary human experience, the threefold world of physical, emotional, mental functioning, and the higher levels of spiritual development, which is the world of ideas, intuitive perception, of spiritual insight and understanding. 2. To develop the mind into a reflector or agent of the soul, and so sensitized to the world of true values that the lower nature, that is, emotional, mental, and physical, or etheric, will become simply the automatic servant of the soul. The soul will then function on earth through the medium of the mind, therefore controlling its instrument, the lower mind. And what is the ultimate purpose of the Antahkarana? Until now, the mechanism of approach to the life aspect, the Antahkarana and the agent, the spiritual will, has not been understood in any useful sense, we are told. The purpose, consequently, for the very existence of the fourth kingdom of nature as a transmitting agent for the higher spiritual energies to the lower three kingdoms will begin to appear. Humanity, the planetary savior. This is our purpose. Humanity will then, for the very first time, enter upon its destined task as the intelligent, loving intermediary between the higher states of planetary consciousness, the superhuman states, and the subhuman kingdoms. Thus, humanity will become eventually the planetary savior, the intermediary between the superhuman states and the subhuman kingdoms. Now, before we go any further, we need to make the distinction between the Sutratma and the Antahkarana. And this was recommended by DK here. So let's have a quick look. The life thread, the silver thread, or the Sutratma, as far as man is concerned, is dual in nature. The life thread proper, which is one of the two threads which constitutes the Sutratma, is anchored in the heart, whilst the other thread, which embodies the principle of consciousness, is anchored in the head. So we see that the Sutratma is a dual cord, dual in nature. The silver thread, or the silver cord rather, the Sutratma or the life thread, different names for the same thing. It is the life, one and indivisible. It is the basis of immortality. It links and vivifies all forms into one functioning whole, and embodies in itself the will and the purpose of the expressing entity, be it man, God, or a crystal. It's the direct stream of life, unbroken and immutable. It's the direct stream of living energy flowing from the source to the outer expression. So as our diagram expresses it, from the source, from the monad, through to the soul, and anchored in the heart, in the personality, in the outer man. It conveys the energy of life and finds its final anchor in the heart, or at some central focal point in all forms of divine expression, be it the mineral kingdom, vegetable kingdom, or animal kingdom. It is the path of life which reaches from the monad to the personality via the soul. It works from above downwards and is the precipitation of life into the outer manifestation. So that's the silver thread, the Sutratma. Right? So it's the path of outgoing. Through the life thread, the soul creates and produces a personality on the three lower planes through which to function. Whereas the Antahkarana, the consciousness thread, is the basis of continuity of consciousness. It's the result of the union of life and substance. It embodies the response of the consciousness within the form to a steadily expanding range of contacts within the environing whole. The Antahkarana is woven, evolved, and created as the result of this primary creation, and works from below upwards, from the without to the within, from the world of exoteric phenomenon into the subjective realities and of meaning. And the path of return, then the soul in incarnation develops sentiency or consciousness down upon the physical plane, then the astral and the lower mental, and later bridges the gap through meditation and service between the three mental aspects. It thus completes the creation of the path of return to the center, which must parallel the path of outgoing, that is, from the soul down. Now, it bridges all these gaps. Through the means of this thread, a man becomes aware of his emotional life. Through it, he becomes aware of the world of thought, and the thread of continuity between the three lower aspects of man is established. And the man is an integrated and conscious and living personality, aware of its three aspects: physical, astral, and mental. Later on, he discovers his soul and identifies himself, the conscious personality, with that overshadowing soul. Then the bridge of consciousness between the personality and the soul technically begins. So we can say that the Antahkarana is triple. It consists, first, of the life thread that comes directly from the monad or the one, and this thread is anchored in the heart during incarnation, and there is the seat of life, in the heart center. Secondly, the consciousness thread comes directly from the soul. It is anchored in the head. There is the seat of consciousness. And thirdly, the thread of creative activity is initiated and constructed by the human being. It is anchored, when sufficiently constructed, in the throat center. And this thread is an extension or synthesis of the two basic threads. So these three major threads, which are in reality 6, if the creative thread is differentiated into its component parts, these major threads form the Antahkarana: life thread, consciousness thread, and the thread of creative activity. Here's the triple creative thread, which is slowly constructed down the ages by men. And these three lesser threads constitute the third thread of the Antahkarana. From the physical body to the etheric, passing from the heart to the spleen. thence to the etheric body, unites with force with the egoic will petals. From the etheric body to the astral body, passing from the solar plexus to the heart center, then to the head, and from thence to the astral body, picking up the energy of the first thread, and it unites with force the love petals. Then, thirdly, from the astral body, then to the mental vehicle, passing from the ajna center to the head center, and from thence to the mind body, picking up the energy of the other two threads. It unites with force from the knowledge petals. So they are essentially, all three of them together, the Antahkarana in process of forming. So we will define, DK tells us, the Antahkarana as the extension of the threefold thread, hitherto woven unconsciously through life experimentation and the response of consciousness to environment, through the process of projecting consciously the triple blended energies of the personality as they are impulsed by the soul across a gap in consciousness which has hitherto existed. Technically, and upon the path of discipleship, this bridge between the personality in its three aspects and the monad and its three aspects is called the Antahkarana. So the Antahkarana is the product of the united effort of soul and personality working together consciously to produce this bridge. So let's have a very quick summary then of the distinction between Sutratma and Antahkarana. As you can see, this summary comes from a variety of sources. So the Sutratma is the life thread. It links and vivifies all forms into one functioning whole and embodies in itself the will and the purpose of the expressing entity, be it man, God, or a crystal. Whereas the Antahkarana is the thread of consciousness. It embodies the response of the consciousness within the form to a steadily expanding range of consciousness within the environing whole. The Sutratma is the precipitation of life into the outer manifestation, or it is the path of life which reaches from the monad to the personality via the soul. Whereas the Antahkarana, through the means of this thread, a man becomes aware of his emotional life. Through it, he becomes aware of the world of thought, and the thread of continuity between the three lower aspects of the man is established. And the man is an integrated, conscious, living personality. Then he discovers the soul and identifies himself, the conscious personality, with that overshadowing soul. And the bridge of consciousness then between the personality and the soul technically begins. So that's the first stage of the Antahkarana. The Sutratma is the magnetic thread of fire which passes through all his bodies and terminates within the center of the physical brain and finally finds its anchor in the heart. Whereas the consciousness thread, the Antahkarana, is anchored in the head. The Sutratma is dual in nature, the life thread and the thread of consciousness, whereas the Antahkarana is interwoven with the thread of life which emerges from the heart center. Now, the beginner is likely to be discouraged and give up because he works in the dark. He is unable to monitor his progress because his brain cells aren't responsive enough to the higher vibration, and so doesn't register his creation. The building of the Antahkarana is interior, subjective work, and consequently, the beginner doesn't see objective results. The only indication of interior progress, we are told, are a flash of spiritual intuition, the sudden realization of the will to good in a dynamic and group form, and an ability to understand and to make others understand certain spiritual and occult fundamentals. So, points to remember when building the Antahkarana. Excuse me. First, that it is the use of energy and force. This work of construction concerns the handling of energy. And for that, we need to understand the distinction between energy and force. And that you all know from our studies in about the chakras, etc. But never mind, let's reiterate the distinction between energy and force, just to refresh our memory. Energy is these streams of directed energy which makes impact upon imprisoned forces. Energy is from a subtler plane, thus making contact with a grosser vibratory force. So some examples of energy is heart or soul or the life thread, making an impact on a form of some kind. Whereas a force is those energies that are limited and imprisoned. So maybe if we can remember that word, imprisoned within a form. Whether it's a body, whether it's a plane, whether it's an organ, or whether it's a chakra. It is projected by the individual or a group in any direction with many possible motives, some good and some selfish. Example, the solar plexus, personality. These are forces, whereas energy is more the subtler energy which makes an impact on whether it's the chakra or a body or an organ. So the force is the imprisoned energy within a form. So maybe if we could remember that definition, a force is an imprisoned energy within a form. So here is another example. Energy is the spiritual triad, but the force is the blend of soul and personality. That's on a much higher level. Secondly, it's the use of the creative imagination. We cannot emphasize this point enough, friends. The use of the creative imagination. It is dependent upon the use of
Upon use of the creative imagination.
Yes, Susie. And DK constantly reminds us of the creative imagination. So he tells us students would do well to reflect upon the relationship of the imagination to the intuition and of both to the mind. So let's explore this. What is then the relationship of the imagination to the intuition, and then the imagination and intuition to the mind? So let's have a look at imagination to intuition first. Well, we know that the heart center is the custodian of the creative imagination. That the astral and the Buddhic planes are very closely related. Ray 4 and Ray 6, which rule both the Buddhic plane, Ray 4, and Ray 6, the astral, are both on the soft lines, 2, 4, 6. There is a very close link between the three orders of devas. That is, the devas of the second order on the monadic plane, the Buddhic devas on the fourth Buddhic plane, and the devas of the sixth order on the astral plane. So there's a very close relationship between these three devas, or devas of these orders, second, fourth, and sixth. Now these devas of the sixth order are closely linked, right? So these astral devas are closely linked to the devas of the second order, these two. And with the heart center of the particular heavenly men on whose ray they may be found. They are allied too to the deva forces on the Buddhic plane. And in these three great orders of devas, we have a powerful triangle of electrical force. And these three orders of devas in this solar system are the most potent, especially in the fourth round. And they influence particularly the fourth kingdom of nature, the human kingdom. Now, imagination and intuition to the mind. The throat center, as we know, is the thought form-making factory. The ajna is very closely related to the throat chakra. When both are blended, they produce the highest manifestation of fire by friction, or the third aspect of divinity. The ajna, as we know, blends and fuses heart and throat energies. And the ajna expresses imagination and desire in their highest forms and are the dynamic factors behind all creation. And the ajna relates the spiritual triad to the personality. So thirdly, it's conscious understanding. That's also a very, very important point. The work of building the Antahkarana must be done with as much conscious understanding as possible. And fourth, we are dealing with a will aspect. This necessitates a higher process of alignment and the evocation of the divine aspect, the will aspect, hitherto relatively quiescent, except insofar as the will find its reflection in the activity of the sacrifice petals of the lotus, plus its distorted shadow in the mind nature. So these are the 4 points that we have to remember. And the 5th point is that we are using the blended forces of personality and soul to build the Antahkarana. Any disciple building the Antahkarana and who has reached the stage of projection should know his soul ray and his personality ray, and should remember that their blended or fused potency must perform the act of projection. And we will explain all this act of projection in the next slides. So let's have have a look at the brief summary of the 6 steps of the building process of the Antahkarana. First, intention. Therefore, we need to focus. Therefore, we need to focus on the mental plane. 2, visualize. We need to picture what we are doing. Then we project, or we release that thought form. Then invocation and evocation. We invoke and we wait for the higher response. And the 5th step is we steadily practice the 4th step and stabilize the vibration. And the 6th step is called the resurrection, because it rises out of the soul and personality consciousness into the triadal's consciousness. So the first one, intention, focus. I mean, look at the eyes of this actor here. Look at the intensity in his eyes as he's focusing on his target. So we are told, orient yourself towards the soul and the spiritual triad. And this is what DK means by the point of tension. You know, you focus, you gather the energy on the mental plane, you gather it there, right? At the right focal point, at the right point of tension, without straining the brain cells. We understand mentally what needs to be done. We focus, we gather the forces, and we build the tension. Now, that's not the normal tension that we know about. This is the mental attention. This is what it means. The focalization of the mental body. We think clearly and we hold that focus. Step 2, we visualize the target. We picture what we want to do, what we have to, why we have to do it, the stages of your work, the resultant effect of your planned activity, and the materials with which you have to work. 3, then we project or we release it. That is, we become aware of the blended personality and soul, the point of focus tension, and the soul ray in its will aspect. We become aware of our particular soul ray in terms of color, sound, quality, motion, or symbol in preparation for projection. We use our will to project it, to release it. We use our soul ray, word of power, as an agent of the will to release its meaning. We picture a line substance, of light substance rather, colored of two ray qualities. And we silently say the word of power with full understanding while feeling the quality behind the words. Step 4, invocation, right? There's the personality invoking the spiritual triad. The bridge is now built. The strands are thin and tenuous at the beginning. From the higher levels, a line of responsive energy is sent forth, which will eventually make contact with a lower projection. That's the evocation. The invocative tension of the fused personality and soul energy then attracts the attention of the spiritual triad. That's the invocative part. Stabilization. So thread after thread is woven until the bridge is strong and stable. That is, the consciousness of who we are invoking is stable. And the 6th step is resurrection. That is, the disciple ascends in full consciousness into the sphere of monadic life. He is resurrected from the dark cave of the personality life into the blazing light of divinity. As now the spiritual triad energy has been evoked, is coming down and is making contact with its lower personality. So let's see these steps in detail. Now, friends, this is when we meditate. These steps are for a particular meditation to build the Antahkarana. Okay? So let's see these steps in detail. Right? The first one, intention. We focus. We orient ourselves towards the soul and the spiritual triad We understand mentally what needs to be done. We focus, we gather the forces, we build the tension. We think clearly, and we hold the point of tension. And we are told that in this first step of focusing, it is the intensity of purpose which will change us from the plodding aspirant into the disciple whose heart and mind are aflame. DK tells us it is not so much a mental decision or a determination, but a focusing of energy upon the mental plane at the point of greatest possible tension. That is, we gather our forces at the highest point of our mental consciousness and we hold them there in a state of absolute tension without undue physical strain upon the brain cells. We orient ourselves towards the soul and towards the spiritual triad. We mentally understand the task that we are about to take. We think clearly about what we are intending to do and how we're going to do it. And we keep that focused tension steady. Two, the step of visualization. We picture what we want, why we have to do it, the stages of our work, and the resultant effect of our planned activity, and the materials with which we have to work. That is, the right tension has been built on the mental plane. Now we draw on the creative imagination. And using our creative imagination is a crucial step, as visual imagination is an essential factor in the building process and is one of the major means of focusing prior to projection. The creative activity of the imagination is the first organizing influence which works within the gathered mental forces. The more potent and the clearer the visualization process, the more beautiful and strong will be the bridge. So picture what we want to do, why we have to do it, what are the stages of our work, what will be the resultant effect of our planned activity, and what are the materials with which we have to work. Remember that imagination is the lowest aspect of the intuition. So by using the imagination, we are actually invoking Buddhi, that is the intuition. The creative imagination, which is the second aspect of the personality on the astral plane, is very closely linked to the second aspect of the triad under the law of analogy. This is the second stage of building and the second aspect of the divine trinity, and is the form building aspect. The creative imagination attracts a response from the Buddhic or the intuitional plane. So let's recall very briefly, friends, the effects of visualization on the pineal gland. The concretized head center, which is the seat of consciousness, the entrance of soul energy, and Buddhi from the fourth Buddhic plane. I know that you know all of that, but reiteration and reinforcement goes a long way in reinforcing the understanding in our brain cells. The visualizing of pictures is intended to focus the aspirant within the head at a point midway between the pituitary body and the pineal gland. Right there. That's where the image is usually focused, between the pineal and the pituitary gland. The pineal gland then becomes the center of the magnetic field, which is set in motion in the first place by the power of visualization. So very important for us to use our imagination. DK tells us that visualization and the picturing, or the picturing of pictures, or the pictorial visualization, is one of the healing techniques of the future, is the healing technique of the future. So we have to cultivate creative imagination. Step 3, project or release. Now let's become aware of our blended personality and soul. The point of focus tension and the soul ray energy in its will aspect. We are aware of our particular soul ray in terms of color, sound, quality, motion, or symbol in preparation. We use our will. We use our soul ray, word of power, as an agent of our will to release its meaning. We picture a line of light substance colored of the two ray qualities. We silently say the word of power with full understanding while feeling the quality behind the words. So this is very, very important, friends. We say the words of power with full understanding while feeling the quality behind the words. So this is a very critical stage. This third stage is the moving of the organized substance forward so that from the lower mind there appears a line of light substance or projection. And this is sent forward upon a word of power. Up to now, the technique is the same for all disciples on all the rays. But now it changes depending on the soul ray. So this third stage of projection is a combination of will, continued visualization, and the use of the ray word of power. We call in our will. We continue to visualize our blended soul and personality rays, this time with a soul ray dominating. And DK tells us that there are many ways that we can do that. Via color, via sound, pictures, symbols, or motions, or symbols of motion of the three aspects of divinity, which we will see in the next couple of slides. First, let's have a look at the symbols of the motion of divine aspects, if we want to use these symbols. The first aspect It's a driving forward motion for ray 1 and ray 7s. But the symbol of the motion of the second divine aspect is cyclic motion, mainly suited to ray 2, ray 4, and ray 6, and a circular motion for the third aspect, mostly suited for ray 5s and ray 3s. Color, symbols, or pictures, you can pick any of those. So if your soul ray is on a ray 1, you can pick the color ray, the symbol of a sword, or the angel with a sword, or, if you like, the astrological sign of Pluto or Vulcan, ray 1. If you are a ray 2 soul, use indigo blue, and a variety of symbols are available to you, either a fiery ball, or the sun, or the chalice, or a triangle, or the pen. These are all symbols of ray 2. Or if you want to use the astrological sign, either Jupiter as a planet or in its hieroglyph. Ray 3, green. Symbols for ray 3 are either gold or a mountain or a goat. Any of those symbols. Now, gold not necessarily in the sense of material, physical gold, but gold which represents the higher qualities of the higher realms. Astrological sign that you can choose, either the planet Saturn or its symbol. Ray 4, yellow or gold. Symbol either a bridge or the cross. Astrological sign Mercury, which is the mediator between the soul and the personality. It is the messenger of the gods, or its symbol. Ray 5, the orange color. The flame is the symbol of the fifth ray. Astrologically, you can use Venus or its symbol. Ray 6, if you're a ray 6 soul, rose, or the symbol of Neptune, the god of the sea, or a pot of water, because water is the symbol of the astral body, or the astral plane. Astrologically, you can use Mars or its symbol. Ray 7, violet, symbol of either the magician or lightning. Astrological sign, either Uranus or its symbol, Uranus being the symbol of ray 7, linking spirit and matter, heaven and earth. Any of those symbols or astrological sign or color would do. Now, what about the words of power that we have to say? Ray 1. The word of power is I assert the fact. Ray 2. I see the greatest light. Ray 3. Purpose itself am I. Ray 4. Two merge with one. Ray 5. Three minds unite. Ray 6. The highest light controls. And ray 7. The highest and the lowest meet. What's being projected or released? It's the full meaning of the word of power said with understanding, feeling the quality behind the words. And DK tells us very, very clearly, if uttered with an understanding of their meaning, they are of terrific potency. So whatever we do, friends, whatever mantra we say, we have to say, realizing its significance, realizing its meaning, and saying it with full understanding. Now here we are told that we are actually creating on the inner planes of meaning, not on the outer plane. So the actual physical sound is not as important. But what is crucial is the thought behind the form, the registered feeling regarding the words, and the understanding of their significance, which is of importance. So let's have a look then at these words of power. Ray 1. The words of power for the Ray 1 soul is, I assert the fact. So what's being asserted here? It's the knowledge and conviction. And note that DK says, not faith. Faith belongs to Ray 6, not to Ray 1. Ray 1 is the conviction and knowledge. So it's the knowledge and conviction that the spiritual triad is a fact, that the relation between the fused and blended personality and the soul is a fact, that the Antahkarana is also a fact, that you are building that bridge between the higher and the lower, that the personality or form and monad or spirit is a fact, that the will of the monad is the factor to be evoked, the knowing, purposeful one can be depended upon to contact the instrument of its will upon the physical plane. That's the word of power for the Ray 1 soul. I assert the fact. The Ray 2 word of power for the soul, the Ray 2 soul is, I see the greatest light. So what's being seen? It's the vivid light of the second ray soul, the most vivid in the second ray solar system. It dominates the light of form and radiates out to the triadal light. The disciple has learned the significance of solar and lunar light, form and soul light. But this is something other. It's the great obliterating light of reality itself. It refers to the central spiritual sun. It is the intense effort to see in the light the relation of the whole. It is not vision or even inspiration to see the vision. It is complete sight, to be the eye of God, the eye of Shiva, the all-seeing eye. And of this, the light of the soul is the dim reflection. Now, Michael Robbins always reminded us to use the second word of power for the second ray soul if we don't know our soul ray. That I think was very, very good advice. So if we don't know our soul ray, use the second soul word of power. I see the greatest light. Ray 3, word of power for the third ray soul. Purpose itself am I. Now it's not easy for the Ray 3 disciple to achieve the necessary focal point of silence. He has to achieve mental silence. He has to overcome the tendency to use it with the idea of physical plane results in his consciousness. He needs to intuitively comprehend and factually grasp the concept that spirit, matter are one reality. Then he'll be able to identify with spirit. Ray 4, word of power. Two merge with one. The two represents the fused energies of the personality and the soul, which merge with the light or energy of the triad. On a larger scale, we could also interpret this assertion as the sun and the heart of the sun merging with the central spiritual sun, or in terms of the three fires, solar fire and fire by friction, merging with electric fire as one. As you know, Ray 4 is the welding ray, is the welding energy that fuses, synthesizes, and harmonizes all energies. So two merge with one. Ray 5, word of power. Three minds unite. That is, the lower mind, the universal mind, the mind of God, of the Logos, and the higher mind. These three minds unite. The sixth word of power for the sixth ray soul is the highest light controls. The highest light, which is the monad, the spirit, controls both forms, the soul and the personality. So the highest light controls. And Ray 7, word of power, the highest meets the lowest. That is, the highest, the monad, spirit, meets its lowest form, the personality. So steps 4, 5, and 6, friends, depict the response and the merging process with the triad. We've done our job of focusing, releasing via the words of power, using symbols, sound, or color, symbol. Now the rest now has to do with a merging process with a triad. So the fourth step is the invocative tension of the fused soul and personality here attracts the attention of the spiritual triad. Why? Because the soul is the nature of love. It's magnetic, so it will attract. So now the bridge is being built. The strands of thin and tenuous at the beginning. And from the higher levels, a line of responsive projection of energy is sent forth, which will eventually make contact with its lower projection. Thus, that's how the Antahkarana is built. The lower invoking the higher, and the higher is being evoked. Therefore, is being sent down, is being projected down. Step 5 is the step of stabilization, of invocation and evocation, until the consciousness is stable and is strong and is focused. And the last stage then is the merging of the triadal energy with the soul and personality. DK tells us the disciple ascends in full consciousness into the sphere of monadic life. He is resurrected from the dark cave of the personality life into the blazing light of divinity. And success in the building of the bridge concerns these points. We hold the mind steady in the light. That is, we preserve the point of tension at its highest possible point at any given time. That is, we need to be focused. Not thinking about what we're going to cook for dinner, who we will meet the next day. No, we are focused on the task, and we do not let the mind waver. We merge our soul and personality ray energies together, with the soul ray dominating always. And if we don't know our soul ray, we use the color of the second ray, which is indigo, and we use the second ray, word of power. I see the greatest light. We hold the mind specifically and in detail the method to be employed in building that bridge according to the particular ray technique. We hold in mind the objective of relating in a new and significant manner, factually, not just theoretically, the spiritual triad and the personality. And the effects of the word of power, is that it keeps the channel clear. It evokes a response from the triad in the form of descending light. It evokes a response from the group bridge. That is, especially when we meditate together. So it evokes a response from the group consciousness. The Antahkarana is now being built by all soul-infused personalities, or constructed unconsciously by all struggling to attain spiritual orientation and nature, and is rapidly becoming a strong cable composed of the many threads of living light, of consciousness and of life. These threads are blended and fused so that no one can say, my thread or my bridge or my Antahkarana, because there is only one group consciousness blended and fused together. The group bridge is made up of multiple individual bridges built by the many disciples, and their dominant strands of light fuse to form one light. And this building of the Antahkarana is the great and ultimate service which all true aspirants can render, allowing eventually humanity as a whole to abstract itself from form. Now that's a quite an interesting statement here. Allowing eventually humanity as a whole to abstract itself from form, that is, to detach itself from personality, consciousness, from identification with a form, but rather to identify with the higher realm, with the soul values, with the superhuman states of consciousness, of hierarchy, the ashram, the master. But friends, I had to add this point to our study. If the Antahkarana is the bridge that man builds through meditation, understanding, and the creative work of the soul between the three aspects of his mind nature, then the alignment that DK gave us in TCF, which we use in our protocol, is a form of Antahkarana building. Note here, right? We invoke the energies of the spiritual triad via the Manasic permanent atom and the Buddhic permanent atom. We project that energy into the egoic lotus, into the soul itself, right? And then we bring it down in consciousness into the various chakras, right down to the brain. So we can see that we are making the link between spirit and matter, between personality and the triad via the soul. So this alignment that DK has given us is a form of the Antahkarana building. So even if we don't actually do the Antahkarana meditation as DK described it, but by using our alignment as we do in our protocol, we are building the Antahkarana. We are building that bridge of consciousness between the triad and us, the personality, the lower mind. I really needed to bring this home to you. Even in your own personal meditation, when you do your alignment, you are building that bridge. You're focused on the triad or on the soul. You're invoking their energies. And in our triangle of synthesis, we're doing exactly that. We're invoking these higher energies and we are bringing them down onto the etheric level through the superimposition of the triangles. First, we invoke the avatar of synthesis, the spirit of peace, and the Buddha. Then we superimpose that energy onto the soul energy, right? The soul, the Christ, Master DK, and our soul group. And then we superimpose that on the etheric group chakras, group head, group ajna, and group alta major. So you see these three aspects are being linked through our meditation. Planetary Antahkarana. The very first few strains were established through the sacrifices of certain of the sons of God when the hierarchy was founded on earth. When we are told the 105 entities came and founded the hierarchy on earth. And then, as humanity evolved, then these entities went on to their own purposeful life, and their place was filled with disciples. From earth, which is now hierarchy. The hierarchy that we know with all the ashrams, the 49 ashrams. Christ and the angel of Capricorn in the Garden of Gethsemane. He built the second half of the Antahkarana so that we could have life more abundantly. We are told that it was the angel born under Capricorn that came to Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane and fused his individual will with a divine will, and thus enabled him to carry out his mission to completion. He came to fabricate the gossamer thread which bound the two together, that is divine will and his personal will, and linked the place of the Most High, Shambhala, with the holy city, hierarchy. The will of God could now be carried to fruition. So it's that second half between spirit and hierarchy, Shambhala and hierarchy, that the Christ built in the Garden of Gethsemane. Christ was the first to carry through from stage to stage the complete revelation of humanity to hierarchy and the revelation of the complete revelation of humanity to hierarchy and of the hierarchy to Shambhala. This he did by virtue of a completely finished and constructed Antahkarana, from humanity to Shambhala, from Shambhala to hierarchy, and from hierarchy to humanity. Thus he facilitated the work of all aspirants and disciples. He made possible their unimpeded progress as far as the opening of each stage of the planetary Antahkarana is concerned. So he made it easy and brought a life more abundantly down to humanity so that we can make these steps. We can approach Shambhala. We can approach hierarchy. So then finally, friends, what is the task ahead? The task ahead of all these three major centers, Shambhala, hierarchy and humanity, working in alignment through adjustment, is to strengthen and beautify and to electrify this bridge of consciousness, thus producing full planetary communication, so that these three centers can be en rapport, aligned, at one. Shambhala, hierarchy and humanity. And DK does tell us in I think it's in the rays and initiations. That's correct. That's correct. For the very first time, these three centers are at one, even though tenuous as it is, but the beginning has been made. So we know the work that's ahead of us. So let's close, friends, with the great invocation, which is a form of the Antahkarana, as we bring the will of God via the heart of God, which is hierarchy, and via humanity to the rest of the world. So let's say it together, each verse sounding a blue Om. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. And let's raise our clasp hands above the head and say, and so let it be, and help us to do our part. And now bring them down to your forehead and let them rest on your heart. This is another form of Antahkarana, friends. As we invoke these energies of hierarchy and Shambhala, we bring them down and we let them rest on our heart so that they can be distributed. They can radiate out from our hearts to our environment. Thank you, friends. Do we have time for any sharing? I know it's taken a bit longer than I expected. I apologize, friends, but there's so much to say on that topic.
I think this was really great, Nicole. It made it clear a lot of points that I wasn't sure of, and and we'll have it for directions for each of our rays, and it reinforced it. I really, I do it, but I don't really feel it because so now I'll try again with renewed vigor.
Yes, as DK says, we've got to do it with full understanding. Because basically, guys, it's just being aware of the spiritual triad, isn't it? That aspect of ourselves, which is the spirit. And as disciples, we know that.
Well, I never heard that part of it,
Yeah.
'cause I did it with Michael Robbins, and it was like, he just used a second ray. The word of power. I see the greatest
Yes.
light, but you didn't picture the spiritual triad and all this, and your causal body in that too. I mean, there were more steps in this one. I think it simplified it for me, really.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it's here so we can go back and look up the steps for each ray.
But don't forget that 3 times a week we do it.
That's true. I never
We
really.
do it.
Okay, good.
Nicole, I cannot tell you how profoundly grateful I am for this beautiful presentation. You have in the source of a couple of hours here just highlighted so much pertinent information in such a meaningful and spiritual and loving way. I had read all of this so many years ago, and I just feel renewed. Thank you.
You're welcome. Such an important aspect of our evolvement, unfoldment. So important. But again, don't forget, guys, it's Antahkarana. Just go. Antahkarana equals consciousness. Bang. As simple as that.
Well,
Simplify
I'll tell
it.
you, for me, it was the most concise and easily understood and yet profound uh, description of the Antahkarana of all the studies I've done for a long time. So I know this must have taken a great deal of work and effort, or maybe not, because you are so good at this. But I'm really grateful. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Susie. It's such a pleasure to bring DK's work to all of us so that, we can understand DK, so that we can move forward in our on our path, the group Antahkarana that DK was talking about, right? We're hand in hand, all of us, and we're walking that path together. So it was a pleasure to hold your hands and for you to hold my hand as well, because without you I wouldn't have been able to, not being able to, but wouldn't have had the opportunity to do that.
Yes, we are the united strands
Yeah,
upon the Rainbow Bridge. Yes,
that's
only that.
right.
Yes, yeah.
Absolutely. And this will be on the website. Odile will be putting it up together with our recording, so you can take your time and go through it at your leisure. And as you say, Susie, there is so much in it that it's hard to remember everything.
Yes, but when we are presented with somewhat such as this, with such love and meaning and purpose behind it, I do not think that we need to worry about the details. I think we all benefit from the overall essence of what has been relayed, and the important, impertinent parts stay with us. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I think it was a beautiful presentation. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, guys. Sorry to have taken your class, your time slot.
Well, I think this substituted very nicely for it.
It was worth it. Thank you.
Okay, everyone. Thank you so much. Okay, well, I will definitely see you next month for the class. Okay. So, what do we do now? Zinadi.
Yes, we.
So, can we turn off the
Stop.
recording now?
Okay.
Right.